He knew he was going to lose, not eventually, not maybe, but completely. The war was over, the outcome was certain, and the man who would take everything from him was already on his way. His name was Cato, and in that moment he had one decision left, not how to win, not how to escape, but how to respond. Cato was not a king, he was not an emperor, but he was something far more dangerous to those in power. He could not be controlled. He believed in something simple, that a man should live by principle, not convenience, not fear, not pressure. Principle, even when it costs you everything. Especially then, Cato lived in the final years of the Roman Republic, a time of instability, corruption, power struggles, and rising ambition. One man in particular was changing everything: Julius Caesar, brilliant, strategic, relentless, and determined to take control. Many people adapted. They aligned themselves with power. They adjusted their beliefs to fit the new reality, because that is what most people do. They survive. Cato did not. He refused to compromise, refused to bend, refused to support something he believed was wrong, even when it became clear that he would lose. That is the difference. Most people stand by their values until it becomes uncomfortable, until it becomes risky, until it threatens their position. Then they adjust. They rationalize. They reframe their compromise as practicality. Cato didn't. To him, losing external power was nothing. Losing internal integrity was everything. And so, the conflict grew. Caesar advanced, victory after victory, until finally there was nowhere left to go. Cato retreated to the city of Utica, one of the last places still holding out. But even there, the truth was obvious. This was the end. His allies knew it, his enemies knew it, and Cato knew it. That night, he sat with friends, calm, steady, as if nothing unusual was happening. They talked, not about panic, not about escape, but about philosophy, about life, about control, because even now, that was his focus. What is still within my control? That is the Stoic question always, even here, especially here, because everything else was gone. The war, the power, the future he had fought for, all of it, out of his hands. But one thing remained: himself, his response, his decision, and that could not be taken, only given. His friends tried to convince him to flee, to surrender, to survive. But survival was not his highest value. Integrity was: to live under a system he did not believe in, to accept a reality he saw as corrupt. That, to him, was a worse outcome than death. Now most people hear that and think it's extreme, and it is. But the principle is what matters. Cato had drawn a line, not based on emotion, not based on ego, but based on what he believed was right. And once that line was crossed, he did not move it. That is rare. Most people move the line constantly to avoid discomfort, to avoid loss, to avoid consequences. Cato didn't, and that made his path clear. Not easy, but clear. That night, he read philosophy, Plato, thoughts on the soul, on life, on death, not to distract himself, but to align himself, to ensure that his actions matched his beliefs, that there was no contradiction, because that is what he valued most: consistency between thought and action. Eventually, the moment came. He made his decision not in panic, not in fear, but with clarity, deliberate, final. He chose to end his life, not because he was defeated, but because he refused to live in a way that violated his principles. Now, whether someone agrees with that decision is not the point. The point is how he made it, calmly, consciously, without being controlled by fear. Because fear is what drives most decisions. Fear of loss, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort, fear of death. And when fear drives your decisions, you lose control. Cato did not. He remained in control of the only thing that truly mattered, his response. And that is the lesson. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control the world. You cannot control what others do. But you can always control how you respond. Whether you act from fear or from principle, whether you bend or stand, whether you compromise or remain aligned. And those choices define everything. Cato lost the war. He lost the political battle. He lost his position, but he did not lose himself. And in Stoic philosophy, that is the only loss that truly matters. Because once you lose that, everything else becomes meaningless. But if you keep it, even in defeat, you remain whole. And that is a kind of victory that cannot be taken away.